Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this is my review of episode 5 of season 3 of the Orville called A Tale of Two Topas. And I was just thinking recently of how much I miss the Clyden and Bortus soap opera because I did kind of enjoy it in previous seasons, and this episode finally brings it all back and continues previous storylines, and it's a good thing in the science fiction setting in which you can age up the alien children much more quickly than you would be able with the human, and so that's another advantage of using science fiction to play with all these ideas. And this episode once again deals with the issue of gender and bigotry and all that kind of stuff, which they use the Mackless society as a metaphor and parody of humanity in the same way as Star Trek often did to actually discuss real issues of humanity and showing the issues from an unusual perspective to maybe provoke people to think about these issues in a different way. And so I love those kinds of things in the old Star Trek shows. And the Orville did a pretty good job of doing that as well, and also it was very comedic, and this show was able to do both at the same time. Also entertain us by making all this comedic stuff, and also deal with interesting issues by using all these metaphors. And so that's why I did enjoy it, even though this season the show became kind of more serious. It kind of stopped trying to be funny all the time, which I'm not sure is the correct way to do that. I do think the comedy was good not just to make the show more entertaining, but also to ease all of these kinds of issues which might be controversial, which some people might get annoyed by. But if you make it all comedic, it will be much more widely accepted, in my opinion. So I kind of preferred how the previous seasons of the Orville were always comedic at the same time. And as for the issues themselves, I think the Orville managed to do it in a far better way than all the recent Star Trek shows were trying so hard to do it but failing at it because they didn't know how to write it. And so this is far more interesting than whatever Discovery and Picard try to do so badly. And I always said that my problem with those scenes, which I was complaining about in my reviews of Star Trek, was not with the issues themselves. I was complaining about the fact that they did it poorly because they didn't know how to write it and they did it in an annoying way. And here in the Orville they actually do it much better, and they also add this political stuff on top because it always connects with the bigger galactic issues. That's something I also like in the Orville, that the personal stories of the characters are always connected with the bigger galactic events, and it shows how politics is affected by so many different moving parts. It's not just two people having a conversation, but it's a much more complicated issue. It's cultural problems, it's political problems, and its personal problems inside the family. All of it is together, and the Orville was able to show all the complexities of all those issues and made us hear all sides of the story. And also I think the story itself, even people who are against things like transgenderism, shouldn't really be against this episode, because what we actually have in the episode is someone who was born as a female and was altered into a male without their consent as a baby, and felt that something is wrong about him all his life, and now after he discovers that he was born a female, wants to reverse the procedure and become a female again. So even people who are against transgenderism shouldn't really be against what is happening in this episode, because they're simply restoring her to her biological way that she was born. And so what's wrong about that? So even people who are against transgenders shouldn't really object to what we see in this episode, because we see someone being restored to how they were born originally, biologically, and so there shouldn't really be any objection by anyone to what's happening in this episode. And I'm sure some people will say, oh, this episode is pushing all these issues and all of that, but I always said I'm not necessarily against those issues, especially in a science fiction setting like this, which is centuries in the future, when multiple alien species exist, some of them probably with multiple different kind of genders that we can't even imagine yet. And so I don't really have a problem with all those issues being played with in a science fiction setting. And also with the advanced technology, surgeries seem to be so easy and simple that you can easily switch your gender from one to the other. And so if that is the case, it's not as big of a deal as in reality, in which such decisions are kind of a one-way ticket and you cannot really change your mind after that. So you should be more careful with those decisions. But in the science fiction setting, in which it's so easy, you can basically undo it the next day if you change your mind. So it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Hell, if I was living in that future with that kind of technology in which you can so easily do that, I might do it for a week just to see how it is, even though I don't have any inclinations to be that way. But if it was so easy, if technology allowed it so easily without any side effects, I'd probably try it for a week. I'd change myself to a woman for 1 week just to see how it is for once just out of curiosity and then switch back. So it really shouldn't be that big of an issue in the science fiction setting in the far future and with all these multiple aliens and all of that. So I don't get why anyone would be pissed off by that. So I guess people who are really against that kind of stuff in real life see this episode as a propaganda tool to promote those ideas. But again, I say, what we actually saw was someone being restored to how they were born originally, so what's wrong with that? And it also deals with many more interesting issues like politics, as I mentioned, because of the Kalon threat. The Union doesn't want to lose any allies, and so they get scared that the Maklans might leave the Union because they feel so strongly against females. And the same with Clyden, who cannot accept his daughter's decision to transition. And Clyden was always a bigot, but he was also a very funny character, and the actor is really funny, the faces he makes. And so I really hope he will come back later and maybe he will redeem himself, maybe there will be a happy ending for this family later on, hopefully. And there were some really good scenes with Kelly confronting Clyden about all these issues and calling him out and all of that. And I would say most of them were really good scenes. The acting was excellent. And Kelly is an example of how you do a strong female character correctly, because she's clever, she's caring, she's tough, she's all of that, and also conflicted about her own decisions because, these are complicated issues, and they show all of that because it's all about the teenager who is not yet an adult who can make his own decisions, and so the parents' wishes should be respected. And what tipped the balance for her was when she discovered that Topa is thinking about suicide, because she talked with Isaac about it and he told her, and so that's what tipped the balance and caused her to take action, because nothing can be worse than that actually happening. And so I do think that was the correct decision. And I like that this episode dealt with all of those kind of issues, the showing the complexity of all of this, because both parents are on opposite sides. It showed the inner conflicts, it showed the emotions of all the characters. Now, the episode wasn't perfect, there were some flaws, such as the fact that Topa looked exactly the same after the surgery as before, except maybe the private parts, which we don't really get to see. And they also showed some flashbacks of that trial in the first season, and it's interesting how they inserted them into the same scene and used special effects to show it as if they are there. But I'm not sure that would be the best example to show to Topa, because didn't that woman live alone in the mountains all her life without any friends, without a mate, without starting a family? So was that really the best thing for her? It probably would have been better to show her that planet of the 3 women of the Maklans. This episode kind of forgot all about that, so that kind of annoyed me a little bit. So overall a good episode, but I can't say it's one of my favorites because I prefer to see some new science fiction ideas, and this idea of changing someone's gender might have been science fiction a century ago, but is not really science fiction anymore. That's something that is happening nowadays anyway, so I would like to see some more futuristic science fiction ideas of stuff we haven't seen before on screen. So that's my hopes for future episodes. Let me know what you think and we can discuss all of this in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.